to More Living with Jim Brogan, your source of information for living the best years of your life your way. For more than a decade, host Jim Brogan and his expert guests have come together each week to share important news and advice that can impact the lives and well-being of those who are retired and those nearing retirement. Learn about issues like health and fitness, financial planning, Social Security benefits, investment advice, and more. And now, here's the host of More Living, Jim Brogan.
Good morning, East Tennessee, and welcome to More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. This is News Talk 98.7 WOKI, and as we kick off the new year in our first show of 2019, I want to talk to you about something very, very important. Do you have an estate plan? If you do have an estate plan, does it need to be updated? How long has it been since you've updated your will? Have you overlooked critical factors in your legal planning with your legal documents, even if you have those things? What about your powers of attorney? Do you know the difference in a springing power of attorney and a durable power of attorney? And why is that so important? There's just issue after issue. How the fact that many of you, your largest assets may not even be governed by your will, probably aren't even governed by your will, and I'm speaking of specifically your retirement accounts. So how do those retirement accounts need to be handled? What about the income tax ramifications? Now, when I talk about, it's a great way to kick off the year because many people many of you listening have not addressed this at all, and many of you that have need to reassess what you're doing. Even if you had an attorney help you, say 10, 15 years ago, maybe even 8 years ago, you still need to be reassessing things. Today, we're going to hit all the major elements that I think you need to be aware of to kick off 2019. This is something you cannot put off. We're going to talk today about why is it we typically put these things off, and how can you create action so you can get this done, because it's so important. We have a good friend of mine, Stephen Carpenter. He's with Carpenter and Lewis. He is an estate planning attorney. He's an attorney that does a lot of things, but estate planning is one of the main things he does. And we're going to dive into all of these things. I cannot emphasize enough how much you need to be paying attention to this and reviewing this on an ongoing basis. So let's just kind of dive right in. Stephen, first off, welcome to More Living. We've had Stephen on many times in the past, but welcome. It's great to have you back with us.
Thanks for having me on your show today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good to be a guest here.
Stephen, let's talk about, many people that say, well, golly, Jim, I don't have a lot of money, so, I don't need an estate plan. And one of the ways I like to say it is if you love somebody and you own something, you need an estate plan. A lot of times people think estate planning means big money for estate taxes. How would you define, Stephen, who needs an estate plan?
Okay. Well, yes, I hear that same question over and over. Why would I need an estate plan? I don't have much. And you start talking to someone, you realize they have a lot. So the fact is that a lot of folks simply dismiss the need to do something, and just the very idea of developing an estate plan, basically, I think for two reasons. One, they think they don't have enough money to worry about it. And also, they think they have plenty of time that they can do it later. So, Jim, as you know, both of those reasons are just oftentimes incorrect.
Yeah, because, and by the way I view it, an estate plan isn't just doing a will and maybe powers of attorney. It's how you name beneficiaries. It's how you title your accounts.
That's exactly right.
Because things pass differently. It's so much more than just doing a legal document.
Yeah. Actually, let's define what we mean when we say an estate plan. It's really just it's a process, but an estate plan is really just thinking ahead and having a written statement of what you want to happen if you become unable to act or after you pass away. It doesn't have to be a complex thing, but it should be done right. And like you said, you need to look at each asset. It's not enough to simply say, I want everything equally to my 3 children. Well, you can write that down and be done in no time. But you do need to look at how each asset is titled and how it's going to pass and decide what you want. So it's more than just writing down something really simple, but it is a fairly simple process.
Well, and an estate plan includes taking care of us while we're alive. I mean, powers of attorney are to take care of us while we are alive, right? It's not just what happens when you die. You know, the will is an at-death document, but the powers of attorney take care of us now. The living will, an advanced medical directive, helps. Death with dignity is what I like to call that.
Mm-hmm, that's right, Jim.
So it's taking care of us, even while we're still alive. Now, I see, Stephen, I think two big reasons people put this off. One is, I've got plenty of time. I think in people hearing that this morning intuitively know that may not be the case, but people are kind of wired that way,
right?
Regardless of their age almost. So we know that things can happen in an instant. God works in mysterious ways. Okay, now the other thing that I see, and I want your feedback if you see this, Stephen, is I think people get in this rut where they think, whatever their decisions are that they're making, it may be how their assets are passed, how they include grandchildren, or if they have minor children, who's going to care for their minor children. I mean, I know that's something that my wife and I have dealt with some, but we feel like we're making a permanent decision. Hey, what I decide today is in concrete. And so it's like, we have to see everything. That's not necessarily the case. I mean, an estate plan should be fluid, right?
That's right. It's something that you do now, but that you plan to revisit later as situations might change. And it's certainly better to do something that's not quite perfect right now than to die without a will or to have a medical emergency and not have a healthcare power of attorney. So it's important to have it, and it's better to have that than, and tweak it later as time goes on. The truth is, if you really care about what happens with your assets and with your family, I like to call it legacy planning as much as estate planning, because it's about the people that you love after you're gone, or who's going to pay your bills if you can't for some reason.
Well, and then when you leave it to the kids, how are you going to potentially impact those lives positively?
Yes.
And making sure you don't impact their lives negatively.
That's exactly right.
By having an unexpected tax time bomb or giving too much money to a kid too soon. Mm-hmm. All those things are so important, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And this time of year, those things come to mind so often. You've just been with family, you're spending time, and you're perhaps going through the holidays without some family member, and you realize, I need to think about doing something for myself.
We're visiting with Stephen Carpenter. He's an attorney at Carpenter & Lewis. He does quite a bit of work in the estate planning field, one of the better attorneys in Knoxville, in my opinion, in that area. And we're talking about the need, as we kick off the new year, to get your legal ducks in a row. Make sure you're taken care of when unexpected things happen while you're alive, and that you're taken care of, and that your impact on your family, your legacy, is protected when you pass away. Let's break into some of the components of the documents, Stephen. Let's talk about the will first. What are some common mistakes people make with a will?
Okay. Frequently, besides not having one,
sure.
It's very common for people to do, like I said, they want to make it as simple as they can, and they really don't make it flexible and try to anticipate things that might happen in the future. So they just assume that what they need is something kind of cookie cutter, or they try to go and they go online and they get some sort of document, and it's really not what they intend. And again, it may be better than nothing, although sometimes it's not. We might talk about that in a second. But some of the things that people do that make mistakes are just not thinking it through. And I guess one of the important things is what your family knows what your wishes are. So they need to have this legal document that they can implement your plan.
Sure. Yeah. And so when you see people working on this stuff, I think a lot of people listening, if they haven't done this, it's because they don't necessarily know the questions to ask. But your job, and, in my practice, I'm not an attorney, but I'm certified in estate and trust services. So I help kind of start the process, bring in an attorney like yourself. It's our job to know how to ask questions to help people figure out what's important and how they might, what the options are. Right? So people don't have to be intimidated. Well, I don't know what to ask. I don't know what I want. Well, we can draw that out, right?
That's right. You have somebody to walk you through the process, ask the right questions, and help you think through things. Very often I will sit down with someone and ask them some questions, and I'm asking them things they've never thought about before. And they're just a little bit stunned. Well, why do I need to think through that? And it's because we're trying to think through the long term. So what if someone dies? What if a child dies and their children are inheriting? How do we treat that?
Yeah. Now, what are some common things that you see, some elements, Stephen, in your experience that tend to be overlooked or forgotten? You know, do you have a story that illustrates why it's so important to make sure all the bases are covered?
Yeah, some of the things that I see very often people forget they even have are like savings bonds that maybe they've squirreled away in a box somewhere, or it's a safe deposit box, and there's significant value there, maybe not a lot of money, but if they don't have it done correctly, they may have to go through a big process to get to that money. So had they thought about it in advance? So that's something people forget about a lot. Timeshares is something people forget they have. Maybe they think of it as a liability instead of an asset, but it is something that's deeded, and they need to address that. Also, it's very unusual that people don't have some sort of asset maybe they inherited, maybe a portion of a family farm, but they've never set foot on it, so they don't even think about it as being theirs. And yet, if they don't do something prior to their death, their children will inherit this just like they did. And at some point, it gets cumbersome because so many people inherited it. An example would be a gentleman who created a trust, and he carefully put everything he owned into it. He did it all right, but he had a pension because he had been working as a teacher. It happened to be in another state. And he completely forgot that this pension will have a final payment, and it's several $1,000s. And so he had meticulously done an estate plan, but he forgot about that one asset. So it helps to have someone who can jog your memory on, okay, do you have this? Do you have that? And then very often people will say, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. The funny thing is sometimes people forget brokerage accounts that have hundreds of thousands of dollars in them as well, which always blows my mind.
Well, and some people have old life insurance policies they forget about.
That's right.
And sometimes they didn't name a beneficiary, and they forgot about a $50,000 or maybe even a $200,000 life insurance policy. And when they don't name the beneficiary, they've now stuck an asset into probate that didn't need to be there.
That's right.
And it just creates a whole lot of complication, right?
That's right. That's right. So they're always could have been easily solved by taking steps before they passed. Yeah.
Now, we live in a digital age. Things happen fast. So there's a lot of trends going on. Mm-hmm. Some of those is more and more people are doing, they're actually recording by video. They're recording some of their wishes. We like to call that a video will. We've also got these big digital footprints. Yes. And what happens to that when we're gone? So a lot of this stuff is changing in this digital world, our access to information. Stephen mentioned earlier, there's a lot of canned wills and legal documents online, and with software you can buy. What are the pros and cons of those things? So don't go away as we kind of delve into the ramification of living in a digital age on estate planning. And let's call it legacy planning as we visit with Stephen Carpenter. You're listening to More Living with Jim Brogan, only on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
During the week, Jim is a financial advisor, an author and speaker with an MBA from the University of Tennessee, who specializes in helping people in or near retirement plan for the next phase of their lives. You can reach Brogan Financial during the week at 865-862-6800 or on the web at broganfinancial.com. And now, here's Senior Market Advisor Magazine's 2011 National Advisor of the Year and host of More Living, Jim Brogan.
Welcome back to More Living here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. I'm your host, Jim Brogan. As we kick off the new year, do you have your legal ducks in a row? Are you going to be taken care of when unexpected things happen while you're alive and when you're gone? How will your legacy impact other lives when you're gone? Having your legal ducks in a row is so critically important. We're visiting with Stephen Carpenter. He's with Carpenter and Lewis. He's become a friend of mine over the years as we work together in serving clients. Very, very good estate planning attorney. And so we're getting his expertise into the mix here on mistakes people make with their estate planning and how important it is on their legacy. And Stephen, I mentioned before the break that we live in a digital age. Change happens fast. And one of the things that kind of has become more popular is more and more people maybe including a video as part of the will, or having a message that's personally crafted for your loved ones. How would a video fit in, and what does the video actually do? What do you cover in that?
Okay. Yes, that is actually very common. In the past, you saw people who would write a little handwritten note or something, and that was wonderful. But I love the video messages that's now pretty common. It's easy for someone to pick up their cell phone and just record it. You don't have to do anything special. And they give messages that are affirming to the person that they're speaking to. Maybe they're doing one for each family member, and they're saying things that they love and appreciate about that person. And it's something that the family treasures because it's your opportunity to speak to them after you're gone. And so it's a wonderful thing that's being done. Another thing that comes to mind, Jim, is that some people will go around their house with their cell phone camera, and they'll record a video of different items in the house and tell the story about how this was grandmother so-and-so's and how it came into the family and the significance of it and the history. And they'll go through the whole house that way, maybe even saying this goes to this person because of this. And the secondary benefit to that video is that if there is a fire or a theft, you have video evidence that you had that item in your home. So it kills two birds with one stone.
You know what I think of when I hear that, Stephen, because really the video, we're talking about recording more of our values, really.
That's right.
And impact. It's not, it's not a legal document that says my IRA goes here.
That's right.
So, and kind of what I think about when I hear that is in estate, when we start thinking about legacy and estate planning, we spend so much time talking about the assets, the stuff. Mm-hmm. But the reality is we have a lot of other things that are way more important than the stuff. So, for example, our life experiences and the things we've learned from our life experiences that we want to pass on to our loved ones, our relationships with the people that we love and the impact that we've had and that they've had on our lives, our spiritual value systems.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So if I put those three things and then put a fourth and name my financial assets, mm-hmm. So I've got my life experiences, which I'd call that an education asset. That's, all the things we've learned in our lifetimes with experience. And then there's our relationships, our spiritual values, and then there's the money and the stuff.
Yes. Yes.
If I asked you as you're listening to this morning, if you had to pick one of those four things, you could not leave that asset to your kids, what would you pick? Well, most people I know would say, well, I want them to learn from my experiences. I want them to learn from my relationships and my impact. I want them to learn from my spiritual foundation.
That's exactly right, Jim.
I'd give up the money.
Yes.
Yet in estate planning, we spend 99% of our time focusing on the stuff. What we should be focusing on is the impact.
That's right. That's the reason I like to call it legacy planning instead of estate planning, because it draws the focus on the family, and hopefully people are able to communicate those values.
Yeah, it's not about the money. It's what the money represents. Mm-hmm. It represents your life. I'll give you an example as you listen this morning. I have a colleague in California. His name's Jack. He's been a friend of mine for a long time. Jack's a little bit younger than a little bit older than I am. He was in college in his early 80s. In the early 80s, he was in college. And his grandfather passed away. Jack was one of 18 grandkids. They were all close to their grandfather. He was Grandpa Claude was his name. And after he passed away, Jack got a letter from his grandfather that he had written before he died. Mm-hmm. Every grandchild got a letter. And here's what Jack said. And I have it by heart, by memory, because it's so impactful. Said, "Dear Jack, I'm leaving you 200 shares of Bristol Myers. Every time you get a dividend, I want you to think about the great times we had together on the front porch playing the guitar. Yeah. This is my legacy to you, Grandpa Claude." What I love about that, what a love letter. Jack still has that letter today, 35 years later. Mm-hmm. 200 shares of Bristol Myers, that wasn't a lot of money. Now, he got a lot of dividends over all those years, but twice a year he gets a dividend.
Sure.
And what does he think about? And I love the fact that his grandfather didn't just say, think of me. He picked a specific memory that was vivid for Jack. Each grandchild got a different letter and a different memory that was specific. That's, to me, how you can attach significance to assets. And that's what I think an estate plan should do, is attach significance to those assets.
Yes, you're right.
And make it about your values and your spiritual foundation and your impact. Right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, so that's what it's all about. So when I think about video wills, that's almost a will of our values. Is that a fair way to say that?
That is, yeah. And it is becoming common among estate planning attorneys who want to encourage those sorts of values and not just look at the numbers.
Now, we talked about the online stuff, and, this digital age, things are evolving. There's also more and more solutions online. Now, more and more people, especially those under 40, they kind of waver between whether they should use an online tool to create a will without an attorney or whether they should go see a lawyer. In your opinion, Stephen, what information can you put together yourself, and when is it important to consult a professional who can give you specific guidance?
Okay. Obviously I am an estate planning attorney, so I am somewhat biased toward having a professional. I'll acknowledge that right up front. But because dying is something you just don't like to think about, and you especially don't want to pay someone to talk to a stranger about. If you don't like to think about it, it's just painful to go to an attorney very often. And so I have seen people who do their own documents. They go to an online vendor and they find either a form or they find something that asks them questions, which, by the way, the form is very ineffective, and I've seen lots of problems with those because it doesn't guide you at all, and it's too easy to make mistakes. Some of the ones that are available now that you walk through and they ask you questions are certainly better. But even with those do-it-yourself where they ask you questions, I do see a lot of holes that are left in those. So it's not perfect, but it's certainly better than not having anything in most cases. I will give an example of an older gentleman who he went through the program, he generated his documents, but he misunderstood a couple of the questions. And so his responses were inappropriate. When he died, his wife comes in with a will, and he's realized some of these are wrong, and he's actually taken white out and removed some provisions from this document he got online. One of them was to white out the name of a nephew that he had intended to, and then changed his mind. So that
it'll be a tough legal challenge.
That's
there.
Right. We ended up having to go to an extra legal hearing, and it cost the estate far more than if he had just had it done right in the first place.
I need to we're going to get to our next break because I need to get to other things. But before we get to our break, Stephen, quickly, and I hope this is I realize you maybe not can answer this quickly, but how often should people review their will and update it? Yeah,
I recommend every 3 years for larger estates and every 5 years for just about everybody. You need to look at the changes in the law, look at changes in assets, and also changes in the family dynamics.
And then I would add into that, maybe even more frequently, if you had a major life event in your family, and I would define that as a birth, a death, or a marriage or divorce.
Yes.
In the family tree, up or down immediate family.
That's exactly
You might
right.
want to get it out and at least review it, make sure it's what you want it to be.
That's right. And it doesn't take a lot of time to go through and review it. Is it still the way I want it? Or is someone that you left money to now on drugs? Maybe a nephew's out there and you're like, oh, I don't want to leave him that $5,000 now. So, yeah.
Now, we're going to get to our next break, but, wills are certainly important. But did you know that wills do not govern potentially a whole lot of stuff that you own? It doesn't even go through the will. So how might that impact you in making sure you get money to who you want to get it to, no matter the order people die, which is a thing that's very, very much overlooked. And what about the tax ramifications? And I'm not talking about estate tax. I'm talking about the income taxes that are due on your retirement accounts. Very important issue. We'll also have our dollars and cents segment, which is also about tax planning for 2019. So don't go away as you listen to More Living with Jim Brogan, only on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
his weekly radio show, television news appearances, and adult education classes taught at the University of Tennessee and Pellissippi State Community College, Jim taps into his extensive knowledge and experience to address issues important to living your best retirement. Join Jim every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI, and visit him online at BroganFinancial.com. And now, here's the host of More Living, Jim Brogan.
Thanks for tuning in to More Living with Jim Brogan, where it's all about living the best years of your life your way. This is News Talk 98.7 WOKI, and as we kick off the new year, we're talking about the importance of getting your legal ducks in a row, making sure you're taken care of when unexpected things happen while you are alive, and that your family and your loved ones are taken care of appropriately, or whatever's important to you is taken care of appropriately when you're gone. Before we get back to our guest, Stephen Carpenter of Carpenter & Lewis, it is time for Dollars and Cents.
Want to be sure you are getting the most out of your retirement? For all the years of your retirement? That's the primary goal of More Living with Jim Brogan and our Dollars and Cents segment, where we provide you with an important financial tip that will help positively impact the quality of your life in retirement. And now, here's Jim with this week's Dollars and Cents tip.
What are you doing to reduce your tax bill? I believe that tax planning is going to become increasingly important in today's world for retirees. We live in a world where both stocks and bonds are very expensive, and the outlook for that is probably very mediocre to poor returns over the coming decade. So if you make less on your investments in retirement, that means that you need to compensate in some other way, and reducing taxes. You know, it's not about what you make, it's about what you get to keep, is maybe as important an element as there is. It's certainly at least top 3 or top 4 things you need to be managing as you approach retirement and retire. Now, there's a recent survey from the Nationwide Retirement Institute, and they surveyed current retirees. And they asked them, where do you expect to draw income in retirement? 91% said Social Security. They'd get Social Security. 70% said they would draw from savings accounts. 68% said they would draw from a 401k. 57% from stocks. 56% from an IRA. 51% from a pension. So over half, a very myriad of combinations between the 401k, the IRA, and the pension. Mutual funds, 48%. 38% of retirees expect to draw from a Roth IRA. And then 35% part-time work. 30% from annuities. Now, here's the thing. All of these sources of income have different tax ramifications on your income tax return. And guess who controls the impact on that tax return? For the most part, you do. Now, there's some limitations. If you draw a pension, it's going to be taxed more than likely 100%. If you're drawing Social Security, you may have some control of how much that Social Security gets taxed. But certainly your choice of where you go to withdraw your income in retirement from your assets, whether it's savings, 401k, IRA, selling stocks or mutual funds, all of that has an impact on your tax return. So think about it. When you make a withdrawal from a savings account or a stock or an IRA, is there a 1099? What type of a 1099 is generated? Because either you're going to get that 1099 at the end of the year and you're going to have to report it and pay income tax on it. And it goes on page 1 of your 1040. So a lot of people don't think about this. So these have tremendous ramifications on your income tax bill. Most retirees have more control over their income taxes in retirement than at any other time in their lives. And there's this sweet spot between retirement age and age 70 and a half where you could potentially live in almost no tax land. And the reason 70 and a half, it ends there for a lot, is because then you've got those required minimum distributions from your retirement accounts. Hey, listen, I know a lot of high net worth people that if they wanted could pay, actually pay no income tax, or at most 10%. But now maybe that's an opportunity. I mean, if you can do some things now that are maybe 10 or 12% income tax, maybe intentionally create some tax, but then later on, you know, it's going to be under the current tax code, at least 22 or maybe 25%, what's your 70 and a half? And remember, the tax rates go back up in 2026. We know tax rates are going up, either in 2026 or when you turn 70 and a half. So you've got some great opportunities for tax planning. So, you know, there are even ways, especially in the early years of retirement, you can probably, many people with good planning can realize capital gains at a 0% capital gains tax rate. What an awesome opportunity. But most people don't think about this stuff. But if you have less taxes, that's more money in your pocket. And as I mentioned in the opening, in this difficult investment environment over the next 10 years, which I think is going to be a challenge. I could be wrong, but that's what I think. Off a lot of research and science and listen to a lot of people smarter than I am. Minimizing taxes is going to be critical so you have more after-tax income. So be sure that it's a great time of year. It's January. Be sure to address your tax planning. That's not what you do with your CPA every year this time of year. That's looking in a rearview mirror. Tax planning is looking forward and thinking about how what you do is going to impact your tax return moving forward.
That's our Dollars and Cents segment for this week. You can find this week's Dollars and Cents segment and others by visiting BroganFinancial.com.
I'd encourage you to visit us online at BroganFinancial.com, and I want to specifically mention my upcoming class, Financial Survival for Retirement. It's at the University of Tennessee Downtown Conference Center. There's free parking catty-cornered there. I think it's the Walnut Street Garage. It's free after 6 o'clock. It's right across the street, February the 5th and the 12th. I'd love to see you there. It's 2 2-hour sessions, 6:30 to 8:30. I cover as much information as I can to help you be informed so you can make prudent decisions to impact the quality of your life. Now, last year, 2 of our 3 classes at UT filled up. We capped at 50 people. So, you know, it'd be great to go online and go ahead and look at that. If you can, first off, you can go to financialsurvivalforretirement.com, and there is a syllabus you can download, and you can pull up a video. I kind of take a minute or so to explain the class. You can also go to my website at broganfinancial.com, click on classes. You'll see my upcoming Pellissippi class in Blount County, March 5th and 12th. I'll also be in West Knoxville, Pellissippi State at Hardin Valley in April. But go check those classes out. I do want to mention for the University of Tennessee on February 5th and 12th, again, it's financialsurvivalforretirement.com. If you're married, there's a couples discount. It's a $59 class, but you can only get the couples discount is $99. You can only get it if you call the University of Tennessee directly, and that's 9740150. It's easy to register with them over the phone, and they'll give you that couples discount where you can both go for $99. I would love to see you there. Again, go to financialsurvivalforretirement.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook online. Go to broganfinancial.com. We're visiting with Stephen Carpenter this morning. We're talking about the critical importance of addressing your legal needs. And one of the things that's often overlooked, Stephen, is we think about these legal documents, but what about all these things where we name beneficiaries? And you know, the most important, life insurance, we name beneficiaries. What I really want to focus on today in our limited time is the retirement accounts, the IRA, the 401k, the 403b, any kind of a retirement account. When you set it up, you're asked to name a beneficiary. Yet, there's we typically don't even think about it. We say, well, I'll name my spouse if I'm married and then my kids. But it's a little box on a form, yet that beneficiary designation supersedes the will. In other words, it doesn't matter what's in the will. Stephen, talk about the implication of that. I think it's the most overlooked area in estate planning is dealing with the beneficiary planning. Talk about the critical importance of including beneficiary planning in the legal process.
Yes, it is very critically important. We talked about the 4 documents, the will, financial power of attorney, the healthcare power of attorney, and living will. But the will does not cover things that have beneficiary designations. All too often, I've seen people, they come in and they bring me their documents and they have an ex-spouse still listed as the beneficiary of a life insurance policy. Or they don't have anyone listed, and with very easily filling out a change of beneficiary form, they could have avoided probate on that asset. And sometimes that's the only asset that ends up having to go through probate. So it really is tragic when people don't look at those beneficiary designations.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, a few years ago, there was a Supreme Court case, and what had happened was a husband and wife in their 60s had gotten divorced, and they had a daughter together.
Yes.
That was an adult child. And they got a divorce, and they kind of separated all their assets. Well, he ended up keeping the retirement accounts, and then the wife got other things. And they all did new estate planning. They did new legal documents, all this stuff. He never changed the beneficiary designation on his retirement account. And he had named his ex-wife. And so guess what? The daughter sued her mom for the money, saying it was supposed to, because in the will it said, I want everything to go to my daughter. Well, he lost.
Right.
Because beneficiary law says the beneficiary governs, right?
That's right.
So it's often overlooked, and it's got to be coordinated. In my opinion, it's just as important as how you do your wills. And if you have a trust, how you do your trust language. Now, there's a huge income tax implication for leaving your retirement accounts behind because you hadn't paid the income tax on most, if not all, that money. We do not have time to get into that today. That is a topic I discuss at great length in my class at the University of Tennessee. So, but it's very important, but that's a topic for another conversation and another radio show, because when we come back, I want to talk about your digital footprint. Think about your email, your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even your online banking and shopping. When you pass away, you're going to leave an enormous digital footprint. What are the implications of that? Do you want to lose it? How do you protect privacy? Or is privacy protected too much with this? Very important topic. Stay tuned as you listen to More Living with Jim Brogan, only on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.
Thank you for listening to More Living with Jim Brogan. If you miss any of today's show or want to listen to it again, visit BroganFinancial.com, where you can access the podcast and other educational materials to help you in your journey through retirement. And now, here's Senior Market Advisor Magazine's 2011 National Advisor of the Year and host of More Living, Jim Brogan.
Happy New Year to you as you listen to More Living with Jim Brogan here on News Talk 98.7 WOKI. We're talking about the need to kick off the year and get your legal ducks in a row. Make sure you're taken care of it when unexpected things happen while you're alive, and that your impact on those that you love is what it should be and is protected when you pass away. We're visiting with attorney Stephen Carpenter. He is with Carpenter and Lewis and specializes very much in estate planning. And let's talk about digital footprint. Email, your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Think of all the things, even online shopping. Most people today, most of you listening, have a significant digital footprint, and you may not want to lose that after death. But to protect privacy, however, many of these applications will not allow another person access to your account even after death. Stephen, how do you counsel people to manage their digital footprint?
Well, one thing comes to mind real quickly is I have a high school friend who I just recently got a birthday reminder, but I happen to know he's deceased. So his wife was unable to access his Facebook account to close it down. So I advise people there are specific steps that need to be taken for Facebook, for example, Twitter. They all have different procedures. You can go to their website and find out how to name a representative who does have the authority to access your account. Maybe all they can do is close it down by sending a death certificate, but at least there's a procedure for handling those digital assets. And we all have them. We have email accounts. We have all kinds of logins, and we need to protect all of those.
Does that stuff need to be destroyed when you're gone? I mean, what happens to all that digital information? What should happen?
Well, what should happen is whoever is in control of your estate should be able to make that decision. Do they leave it up for posterity and all your posts and photos are still there, or do they completely delete the account? So it's ideally the person that you've named should be the one to make that decision, or you've given them instructions on what you prefer.
Yeah, it seems to me like your email, you'd want all that destroyed, wouldn't you? Well, there might be important information that you want to archive, but then once you archive it all, you'd want to destroy it.
That's right. Most people do.
Whereas Facebook, you might want to archive all the, you might want to keep those for,
That's right. That's right. It's very common for someone to have not given passwords even to their spouse. And so no one can get to their emails even to respond to important things or to receive their online banking information if they get their statements electronically. It really creates a hazard.
Yeah, and like my sister passed away recently, unexpectedly. No, that's okay. And we can't get into her phone. And there's important contact information in there that would help us immensely. But it was unexpected. Mm-hmm. And she has a lot of information, passwords, online banking. She has a lot of that stuff stored in her phone, but we can't get into the phone.
Okay, yes.
Another thing, to just when you think of passwords, we don't always think about the phone.
That's right.
But there might be, a lot of people keep a lot of their important information in their phone.
That's right.
So these are important things to think about. And this is where, you may not have thought of this, so we're just trying to bring it to your attention as something that really needs to be addressed. Now, I do want to talk about one topic, Stephen, and that is charitable planning.
Oh, yeah.
I believe, especially those of us that are blessed to have a nice life, we need to think about those less fortunate than us, churches, charities, things that are important to us that impact lives, and really have we talk about that word legacy, talk about having a legacy. Talk about how you can structure your estate plan to best leave some assets directly to charity.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Jim, I love it when clients want to leave a portion of their estate to one or more charities. A lot of times people, especially with a traditional IRA, you can leave that traditional IRA money to a charity. And while your heirs would have had to pay tax as an individual, the charity is tax exempt, and therefore all of that otherwise taxable money goes to the charity tax-free. You can even replace that with life insurance, so your heirs still get the value that would have been in that account, and yet the tax that you've deferred all these years now has gone to a charity that has greatly benefited from that asset, and yet they didn't have the tax hit, and you've still taken care of your family.
So charitable planning at death should begin with the retirement account assets.
That's right.
Right? Because $100 in my IRA isn't worth $100 to my kids because they got to pay the income taxes, but it's worth $100 to the charity.
That's exactly
But if we include the charity as a beneficiary, it could blow up all the income taxes for the other beneficiaries. So that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, that we don't, we spend time on wills and trusts, but we got to spend equal time on how we name beneficiaries and make sure we don't deal with these kind of problems.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do want to mention from a tax perspective on the charitable thing, make sure if you're over 70 and a half, you understand that the qualified charitable distributions are permanent pieces of the law. You can give money directly to charity from your IRA, not from a 401k. That you cannot do that from a 401k, but you can from an IRA, and it counts towards your minimum distribution. It is a page 1 tax deduction, and then you still get whatever your deductions are on page 2. In closing, Stephen, I do want to just mention, you know what? I think we got real quickly here. More and more people are using living trusts because they want to bypass probate. Is probate in Tennessee very difficult? And what level, what would be a consideration where somebody in Tennessee would want to consider a living trust? We've only got about a minute, but can you give us a couple of reasons somebody would want to consider that?
Yeah, we haven't talked really about trust, but it is the next level of estate planning besides those 4 documents. And generally, someone would want to consider a trust if they have a blended family, if they are concerned about privacy. There are many tax reasons. Tennessee has a very, very modern statute. We have actually been ranked 3rd in the nation for our statute for trusts and for LLCs and other things. So we are progressive in that, and we have some tax benefits. So it's something everyone should consider.
Okay, absolutely. I hate we're out of time. We had so many other things we could talk about, but as we kick off 2019, this is something, if you haven't addressed it, or if it's been several, 8, 10, 12 years, you need to take out your legal documents and reassess your estate plan, include your beneficiary designations. Stephen, thank you for joining us. How can we get hold of you at Carpenter & Lewis?
Yes, people can look at my website, carpenterlewis.com, or call at 690-4997. Today
we've discussed your legacy, because greater legacy can provide for more living, so you can live the best years of your life your way. Thank you for tuning in. This is More Living with Jim Brogan, only on News Talk 98.7 WOKI.